Hey everyone, today for another vlog. So new period, new color. Today we have the vibrant yellow, the yellow of joy and power and energy. Because yeah, it's kind of the vibe I fell into. My whole life has been very much, I don't know, I would say, very repressed. In many ways. Especially repressing joy. Interesting, repressing like curiosity and all that. I remember as a kid, I was really like. I was really a vibrant, high energy, curious kid, and then something along the way, like like the social interactions, the social environment, you're taught that you're weird. At least you're told that you're weird, rather. You're told that you should be quiet and disciplined and obedient and all that, and that stuff kind of goes away from you. It's kind of sad the way it happens. So you know, deliberate reminder of myself for the inner child that is still very much alive in me, right? The very vibrant and curious and joyous child that still exists. So for today, I want to talk about like the obsession with sinning. Not that I'm a religious person, nor do I have a religious history, or has my life been influenced by anyone religious. It's because there's a general pattern I see in myself, and I think it's quite general within human beings, right? Of just focusing on the sins, like all the things I'm doing bad, all the defects about me and all that, like and for now I simply want to observe the pattern. Like I don't really intend to change anything major because there's one part of I had been reading like like a book on Gurdjieff's teaching, on Gurdjieff, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, by Kenneth, and one of the idea was put on pretty early on in the first few chapters, is that self-observation is incredibly important, right? To just live the type of conscious, deliberate life that we want, and the problem is that it can be pretty dangerous to try to change things about yourself too early on, because like many of the behaviors we take, they are like responses to other things, and so like when you change one thing, you inevitably affect the entire structure, right? So it would be kind of like trying to remove your crutch without healing your leg first. It's a bit like that. So for now, I simply want to observe that pattern, and that pattern is to really like see yourself as a sinner, and to point out all the ways in which you are not like a perfect Christian, so to speak, or in a general sense, well, because most people are not religious, but like in the sense of like all the defects you have and all the ways in which are not perfect, and then and I use religious terms because I'm pretty sure this started very much with like the type of uh I'm not sure like Orthodox or Protestant, whatever branch of religion or Christianity it was, but like this, this view of like it's all focusing on the sins, right? Like not even thinking about God, or like the joy of, or the mystery of life, or the joy of life. It's all focused on sin, and as you may expect, it leads to a very miserable worldview, a lens through which to view the world, because suddenly like you can never be like enjoying life, or you can never really feel good about anything, because you're always focusing on what is not perfect. And I mean, I'm quite certain that no single human is perfect, so you're basically setting up an impossible goal, and it never feels like there is anything good or rewarding. It just feels like there is less pain. Like it just feels like there is relief, right? It feels like there's only that. It feels like there is only pain and then relief from that pain, from that kind of worldview where you only focus on the sin, right? So let's make it more explicit, because I know I'm using very religious terms, so let's make it explicit for what it feels like on the personal experience. So I think, so what I noticed about myself from just reading through things that were piquing my interest today, is how much of a self-absorbed I am. Like I'm not sure I would use the word narcissist, but at least I'm very self-absorbed, and like you know, it's one of those things that again falls into like the sinner type of lens, which is somewhat useful. It's useful to notice your defects, but at the same time, I noticed like the 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 self-centered kind of reflects on itself in the sense that like the only way I deal with that is by only focusing on myself, right? So like it's kind of interesting how being self-centered has as a solution a way of relating to itself which is also self-centered. So in other words, like uh trying to only think of yourself as a as the thing that needs to change in order to fix yourself instead of like just trying to bond with other people or like trying to find something higher than you, that type of deal, right? So what I'm saying is that um being self-centered in such a way that the only way you can see yourself out of of being self-centered is to only think about yourself, right? I think I'm very poor at explaining it, but you can sort of see like the weird mental gymnastics going on, and the the huge bias for that play, right? So the fact that there's something pretty huge being ignored, probably because there is fear, right? So why am I self-centered? There's probably a big reason for why, like it doesn't seem like something very innocent, but I think the general dynamic I want to see in this episode is not so much self-centeredness, which is maybe something I would want to talk about in another vlog, but the dynamic I see here is more like quite simply, focusing on your undesirable traits instead of what you would want to see more in your life, right? So, I mean, one it's the classical example, like do you see the glass as half full or half empty? Except in this case, it's like it's not even the same. It feels like because oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I think I see why it's not the same. So I think the question is the glass half full, half empty? It's a bit of a static question, right? It doesn't really think about possibilities or or like a changing world, which is what we live in, right? A changing world and a changing self and a changing worldview and so on. It's like when someone asks, "Is the glass half full or half empty?" I'm kind of tempted to ask, like, why is there only one glass? Why is there a limited amount of water? Why not have more glasses with more water? Like why? That's already a weird framing to say. Why is there only one glass that is that's 50% content, whatever you want to interpret it as. It's kind of weird, right? Like that's kind of seen as static because I think the pessimist optimist dichotomy is way way wilder than just thinking of that term of half full, half empty, because there's also like the trend, your imagined trend. Like do you see yourself as moving closer to your goal? Do you see yourself as not living up to your potential and all that? What does it feel like in terms of trajectory, right? So there's also that aspect, and I think when we are focused on like the sin aspect, all of your defects, it, it doesn't it's really an unenjoyable worldview because like it feels like you're not really getting better. It feels like you're getting less bad, which doesn't feel as inspiring, I would say. Like just like being great as opposed to not being bad. Like just the terms are very discouraging already. So yeah, so that's kind of a pattern I noticed myself, and I think that's quite a general pattern, right? So the way we treat ourselves as like impure, like I have to remove all of my defects and all that. And really, it's a very questionable claim to say whether that really leads to a more fulfilling or even virtuous life. Like, is it really virtuous to focus on all on your defects? Like, what about focusing on your strengths? Like what about developing your strength? What about working on projects that bring something important to the world that you want to see unfold? What about that? It's very questionable, at the very least, whether focusing on your quote unquote defects is really virtuous. I feel quite confident that it's not the case, but the thing is that uh, intellectually knowing something, right? So I intellectually know that it's not helpful to focus on my weaknesses or whatever, or my undesirable traits or whatever you want to call that. I intellectually know that, but to really embody it is something completely different, right? And I still tend to fall into those patterns again. But yeah, once again, is it really a good idea to focus on that? I don't think so. It's probably more important things in life than to focus on all the ways in which you're not perfect. I think it's probably just better to just focus on a thing that's just kind of resonates with you and go along with that. Um, yeah, so it kind of reminds me of another thing, and which I'm more to close out with, which is like how, sometimes like we can kind of try to like solve other people's problems. So like it reminds me of like how one channel I really enjoy watching is a person called Noah Elcrif. He talked about how he felt like he wanted to like heal uh his like ancestor trauma, right? So like he talks about trauma a lot, and he talks about, and as you might know, like trauma is an inherited thing, right? So the way your parents are treat the way your parents treat you is also a result of how their parents treated them. And so like he kind of felt like he wanted to heal like all of that trauma, but then he realized quite quickly that it's a very unfair burden to put on yourself, right? To try to heal all of your ancestral trauma, because it's really not even yours, first of all, and second of all, like you're basically going up against the entire human dynamics that led to warfare and conflict and ultimately trauma. Because yeah, it's really has nothing to do with you, right? It's something much bigger than you, and to put all of that burden on yourself is really unfair. And so what he realized is that it's really a bad idea to focus so much on healing. Like he basically said that you should basically just pursue whatever you want out of life, and that if something is on the is in the way, and it feels like you're not really being genuine or like acting out uh from your more authentic self, and instead you're more like retreating and acting from more of a place of fear, then in that case you might want to look at the trauma and all that and uncover that. But unless that happens, there's really no reason to seek out the trauma. Like this, there's really no reason unless there's a blockage that is in the way of something you want. And so yeah, I think that's oh yeah, links up with something very nice actually. So if you're familiar with the chakra system, right? So for now I'm just gonna keep it at the level of, let's call it, functions, right? So the first three chakras in terms of function are respectively, the first one is about survival, the second one is about desire and also sexuality, and the third one is about power and will. And so the fact that desire is prior to power and will is actually quite important now that I see about it, now I think about it. Now I just in the context of this discussion, because if you have nothing that you desire to move towards, then what is the point of having like a will and having power and the ability to do things? There really isn't much, right? There isn't much point, right? It's like having the ability to run really quickly, but you have nowhere to run towards. So like, what's the point of having those legs? Um, Maybe the analogy is not great, but like, yeah, like desire is really fundamental, and it's quite interesting how much our society represses that aspect of us. Like it really robs us of like our ability to independently pursue our own interests, unfortunately. And yeah, it leads to, I think it leads to the situation we have right now, which is like kind of the way people see themselves as how to say, like the way people look at lives like a list of things to do, like it's a drudge. Is that the word? It just feels like it just feels like a list of things to do. It doesn't feel like things you're consciously engaged in, and yeah, it feels like a pretty shitty state to live from. And fortunately, I think there are many things that we can do to move ourselves away from that. Like I think the first thing to do is really just to treat ourselves more kindly, right? It's kind of it's kind of crazy to me that I still tend to treat myself quite unfairly, even though I'm a pretty safe situation, right? Like it's not like there's something that's gonna like collapse on my head, or if I don't do it, like I have a job, and besides that, it's not like something is gonna like fall off into my own world if I don't do something I don't want to. As I'm quite free in my free time, so yeah. But yet I still have like those old remnants from school and the way I used to treat myself, and it feels pretty weird, right? But I think that's just what it means to be human, right? Dealing with baggage as you move along. Like Yeah, I don't think there's ever such a thing as like a clean slate. But as much as it would be cool to have that, it's probably always something a bit like, inherited baggage and all that. And well, I guess that's just what it means to be human. Yeah, so that's about everything I had to say for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.